So welcome to the channel, Emily.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. So, well, maybe just give us a little bit of background into what got you interested in this whole crazy stuff we talk about called whatever, awakening or spirituality or...
Called whatever. Yeah. I think it's kind of along the lines of what you've and many other people have said is just I truly felt for the longest time that this just couldn't be it. Like there had to be something more going on. Like I just couldn't fathom that you're born and then you live, 80 or 90 years maybe, and then you die. And then that was it. Like I was like, no, like that was depressing to me. Or I don't know. It was something. And I remember having those feelings even when I was really young, like I would contemplate it and it would make me really sad, like really sad. And I remember feeling that sad feeling just a few months ago. And I was like, I felt this before. And it's almost like that, like I don't know. I don't know. I felt it before. Yeah. And it was a weird thing because I think I also almost realized at that time that it wasn't all that was there. And that was a little scary, back then. So I don't know. But I mean, who knows?
Yeah. And so when did you first come in contact with what we would call like formal, I don't know, spiritual either books or like, was it Eckhart Tolle? Was it videos or that kind of thing?
I don't know. I mean, even when I was younger, I would pretend to make like potions and spells. It was like always the mystical really always intrigued me. I loved it. I always have loved ghost stuff. Anything with spirits and magic and tarot, all that stuff has always drawn me in. Like I don't know, it's, I guess, the side that I just really, really enjoy to delve into. And I usually take it to like every rabbit hole you could jump down. I just go because it's just like, I think I've just been looking for what it was I knew I was not seeing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I can relate to all that. Yeah. So I was always interested growing up in all those things, like the paranormal or ghosts or consciousness or just anything that was fringe in one sense. But even then for me, like I could tell some of that would sort of lead down this rabbit hole of like the human version of it. And I knew even then there was something still beyond. I always felt there was something really beyond. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was. And I didn't realize in one sense it was beyond me, beyond my limited mind. But yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
It's always been a mystery. And it was like this thing that I was like, I got to figure it out. I don't know why.
Yeah. You could feel it.
Yeah. You feel it.
You could feel it.
It's the tasteless taste. I don't know. It's like you just, it's like right there, but you just, I don't know.
Yeah. Did you ever do like different spiritual practices or meditation type practices or things like that?
No, I really didn't start that until, well, it's funny because I was on a totally different path. I don't know where I was. I was pretty much just like partying. I love to party. And I was bartending at the time. And it was like a totally different lifestyle that I had going on. And I had just gotten married. And we got married in September. And that January, we had a honeymoon scheduled for the following June. And then that January, like late January, February, I woke up. It was a Thursday morning. And I'm telling you this because I think it will lead into what this is. But it was a Thursday morning. And it's like it was 2 a.m. And I remember I woke up and I just sat like straight up in bed. And it was like someone had slapped me or something. And I heard this voice. And it said, "You're pregnant. It's a girl. Her name is Sophie." And I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is going on? And I had never, like, I didn't even plan on having kids. Like, if you had talked to my mom, she would have been like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, it just was not who I was. It was not a maternal person.
Wasn't on the radar.
And I've always kind of been more, I guess, on the masculine side, than feminine. I don't know. I kind of go back. I don't know what I do. But so I had that and I called my mom that morning. I tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. And I called her. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And I told her what I thought. I was like, I had a dream, or I had this thing happened. And I told her what happened. I was like, and I heard a voice saying I was pregnant, and it's a girl, and I call her Sophie. And she's like, is there any reason for you to think that you might be? And I was like, no, not at all. Like, it's not even like I have a honeymoon. Like, we haven't gone on our honeymoon, like, what are you doing? Like, this can't be happening. So she's like, well, the next day, go in the morning. It's always, your first pee is the most potent. So try tomorrow morning if you want to test out this dream or theory, whatever you have going on. I was like, okay. So I was on my way. I was going to manage the bar that day, and I had to open. I was on my way down to the bar. And this was so in my mind, like it was just this crazy experience that I was like, I have to find out if I'm pregnant. Like it was just such a loud voice or whatever it was in my head. And so I went and got a test on the way. I went straight to the bathroom. I took the test, and I about died because I was pregnant. And it was still pretty new. Like I went to the doctor, and it was only like 7 weeks or something. It was fairly freaking new. And I already knew it was a girl because.
And you named her, and did you end up naming her Sophie?
Sophia. Yeah. And we call her Sophie. Yeah. So, I mean, and that experience, I mean, I've had a lot of other things. My brother had passed away, and I always felt like he was an angel. I've always believed in angels and all that stuff. I just the non-duality and the awakening I didn't really get that or hear about that at all. I mean, I knew Buddha, what happened to Buddha, but that's what I pictured. If someone were to talk to me about it, I'd picture, like you look like Buddha. So it just wasn't something that even entered my brain that was a possibility. I just always loved the mystical and, the unseen and the unknown and the mystery of it all.
Yeah, just listening to you speak, it's common because I interact with a lot of people who have gone through life, like, I don't know how to say it, but like just primed to wake up, or, not that anyone's specifically primed to wake up. Anyone can, and many people do, but sometimes it's just like you just feel it at the periphery your whole life, but you don't know what that is, and you don't really have a thing to call it. But you just sort of know it. You just know it's there. It's like waiting in the, just waiting just a little bit beyond.
I even hear songs that I used to listen to all the time, and I'm like, God, the undercurrent of that song is just like screaming, wake up, like it's crazy. When you go back and really think about it and listen to it, and it's just it was all pointing me to here. Mm-hmm. And I never knew at all. And it was a really, excuse my language, a really fucked up way to get here. But I got here. So it was crazy. It's been wild.
Yeah, there's such a really cool sort of synchronicity to things, but it sounds romantic, after the fact. But when you're going through it, it doesn't seem mystical. It seems like down and dirty, crazy, like hell, weird twists and turns, emotional, like turmoil, like all that. Did you go through a lot of emotional like struggle and things like that? Is that what you mean by hell? Or
yeah, I mean, I think I've always battled my whole life. I've battled depression and many thoughts of why am I here? Maybe I shouldn't be here. I used to cut myself, and I don't know, can I talk about this stuff, or is it too
you can talk about it.
Okay. I just don't want it to offend anyone or anything, but
no one will be offended here.
It was really rough, and the reason, or a big part of it, was because the brother that passed away, when I was probably in 6th grade, he started doing a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, and it got to the point of where he was he was not there really anymore. And it was a really hard situation for our family, and to live in that house with him. And the police would come, to arrest him all the time. They'd bring him back. He'd run away tons of times. It was just a really, really hard time to grow up. And there's a couple things that happen, interactions between me and him, that I think I did not realize the intensity of the fear that I felt during that. And I think I built up huge defenses to keep myself safe and to make myself be like, I'm strong enough to not be in that situation again. But it was all because I was so scared at that time, and I did not realize it. I interpreted it as like, I must be stronger to not have that happen again, you know? So I think I just made myself really hard shell, you know? So
Right. Yeah, that, I mean, and that's a pretty common thing too, that when you're going through it, it's survival mode, right? And the child, the young adult, whoever it is, they just do what they have to do to get through, but it gets incorporated into their apparent identity in one sense. So it's like you don't necessarily reflect on it, but at some point you might see like, wow, how much that armored you or
yeah,
narrowed your identity down into the survivor or whatever.
yeah. And I think from then on, situations and certain people, if I felt a twinge of that fear or something just made me feel that way, it's like a wall just automatically goes up, and I don't know. And I think I created a bunch of different, like I told you, identities are like, I think I had a bunch of different identities for different interactions with different people in different situations. And I would like morph into a different person. And I think by the time that I found out I was pregnant, and this time I was just so lost and so confused about who I even was, why I was even here. You know, it was just all those feelings. And after all those years, it accumulated. And I think that was just my breaking open, because even the pregnancy, I did not like being pregnant. It felt so foreign, and it wasn't like I was planning a pregnancy and, you know, excited. I mean, it was just like, bam, your whole life changes. And I was not prepared for it at all. I was still in party mode, you know, like I still was like, no, it's time to still have fun, you know, whatever. And it makes you grow up really fast. And I think it was really hard. And it brought up every insecurity, every fear, every shame, everything. But I didn't know that that's what it was doing. And then I saw this conversation with the doctor, and she had said that, you know, a lot of times children will come into your life to teach you what you're not seeing about yourself. And my God, is that true? I mean, she saved my life because she completely changed it, you know?
Yeah. This was a physician you came in contact with?
No, just a video I had watched, but I just thinking back to it, like my daughter changed my
Yeah.
life, but
Yeah,
it
of
was
course. Yeah.
completely not in the way that I ever saw it coming. But she saved me, I feel, for sure, because it made me have to stop and slow down and really start to take a look at myself and how I was behaving, how I was thinking, everything, everything. How I wanted to raise her, because what I went through. I mean, it was just all that stuff. It all came into play.
Grace, but fierce grace.
Oh my God, very fierce. Extremely fierce.
But you know, as challenging as that is for anyone, and especially when you're not ready and you have, you know, a lot of baggage and stuff, to just the mere acknowledgement that, okay, this situation, this child, this is here, and it can show me a lot if I'm willing to look. You know, I'm just willing to see and feel and actually acknowledge what's going on inside me. What an opportunity, but yeah, very difficult to go through, I'm sure.
Fought it for a long time. I was not willing to see, and I was not willing to hear. And then I think also when COVID happened and we were all kind of forced to be, you know, alone with yourself. I mean, that's when it really like full blown awakening and what's going on, and then horrible dark night, the souls, and I mean, my God, it all just sprang forth.
Yeah. Is that when you got in contact or found out about non-duality and more direct awakening?
Yeah.
How did that play out, or how did you find it?
I was trying to think about that the other day. I think I started listening I got Eckhart Tolle's book, and then I started just doing more meditating just to kind of calm my brain, because it had gotten so out of control, like horrible, horrible things I would say to myself. And I just didn't want to live that way anymore. I literally couldn't take it. So I was either going to take myself out of the equation, or I was going to sit with myself and really see if I could get to the center of my Tootsie Roll. Like, that's what I think. I mean, like I told you, I feel like an Alka-Seltzer. Like I'm just slowly dissolving out, like it's every day it's different. I don't know.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle is definitely a gateway drug for a lot of people. His book, Power of Now, is so powerful. It's so accessible. And if you read it at the right time, it just gets you on this path. It gets you rolling down some hill.
Oh my God,
really
yeah. And once I start rolling, I just haven't stopped. And it gets faster and faster sometimes. And it's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's incredible.
So we started chatting not too long ago, I think, and you mentioned some interesting things that have happened recently in your experience, but I can't remember the details. Maybe you can help me.
I remember the Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah, the Alka-Seltzer, yeah.
Yeah. There's been some weird visual things. I feel like I'm starting to kind of, I don't know if play is the right word, but really try and have direct experience with that. And that's a trip. And that interview that you just did with the artist, mm-hmm. and those, what did he call them?
He called them
observatories.
Observatories, yeah.
Yeah, those were amazing.
Right.
Oh my God, my mind was blown. I watched it like 3 times. Yeah. Those are incredible. So
he told me that it's nothing like the video. He's like, the videos are good, but it's nothing like that in real time. It's like 100 times that. So
I bet I'm excited because I got something just from the video. So it's like,
me
God,
too. I'm
person,
just like,
that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Holy moly. So
totally. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, and then a lot of it's a lot more quiet with me, which is nice. I feel a lot of creativity, like I just want to create. Mm-hmm.
Did you notice a change in how you experience yourself?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was just looking in the mirror this morning and I was like, I don't even know what to think anymore. Like you just don't know. I don't know. It's odd. It's different.
How about the sense of like there being weightlessness or lightness?
Yes.
Something that like a weight that dropped off at some point.
Yes. That was, I think I texted you that and I said, I feel extremely weightless. And that has kind of stuck with me, but it goes in and out, I guess, is the best way to say it. And I actually just worked the last, I think it was like 5 days in a row. And that was interesting because it started out really weightless. And then I think just, being in that situation, you just kind of, without even thinking about it, you kind of get sucked back in, and then you have to kind of figure it back out. But it's not like I can catch it now to where I'll have a thought. Like I said, I told you it was a thought about fear, but then I think, well, who's afraid? Like I can catch it and go, that doesn't make sense anymore. Like it just doesn't.
Isn't that funny? Like so the solution to the problems is not convincing yourself there's no problem or even solving a problem. It's like looking back and reminding yourself, well, who does that refer to? Like going in the moment that's touched, it's like, oh, okay,
it's the tasteless taste. Yeah. And you taste it. Yeah. And it kind of just throws it all off. And you're like, what was I even thinking about? Like it's the craziest thing. It is just crazy. And I think I told you too, like I feel crazy. Like I think you're crazy for wanting it because it is such a shift. I mean, it's a complete and utter loss, I guess. It's very heartbreaking as well as heart-opening at the same time. It's a very, like you always say, it's a paradox. And I was like, what does he mean, paradox? Like, what is he even trying, like before I would watch your videos. And I'm like, I don't understand this. And now then I realized too, I was listening to a video by Violet and she was saying to get more into the feeling and the emotion. And I was like, wow, I really have not been doing that a lot. It's more been intellectual. Like I've got to get it, I've got to figure this out. And then as soon as I heard that, and I just kind of was like, I'm just going to let it go. Like, I'm just going to get more into my feelings. I'm going to focus on sensations and I'm going to stop pressuring myself. And it was like, as soon as I did that, it was, I don't know, just started slow, like faster than before, but it felt like a slow, fast moving, dissolving.
Yeah.
Like an Alka-Seltzer.
Like an Alka-Seltzer.
Like an Alka-Seltzer. That's the best way I could say it.
Yeah, there's this thing that's so hard to talk about that I don't talk about it too often, but I could say it this way. There's an you could say an unbinding that occurs, and we could say it in consciousness, or the space of where we think we are. And in seeing that there's no distinct us in that space, there's just something like space. But even that's not quite right, because it's not an idea. But that, and then when you start to see that that is actually physically or experientially continuous with sensation, with the physical experience of being a body, being what we call a body, and sounds and so forth, then you've found a really great pass there, the mysterious pass. You know, it's that it's always accessible. You can always slide right down into the again, paradoxical depth and intimacy, but also spaciousness and nothingness of the sensations themselves. And it's like another order. It's almost like an order of magnitude beyond that kind of unbinding, but it's in physical form, which is crazy and amazing. Yeah, that's that slide down into the emotion body, or into the physical experience of aliveness.
Well, and then when I started doing that, I was like, so what comes first, the thought or like that feeling, you know, the emotion? I was like, oh my God, it's a feeling. And I just add a thought. Like I could add whatever thought I wanted to that, and then maybe it would change how that felt. And it's just been so cool to kind of, and I think the more that I say I experiment, it takes a lot of that big fear that I used to have. Because I didn't realize I had such a fear in the beginning. I thought I was like, no, I'm not afraid at all.
That's what people say a lot. Well, I'm not afraid to die. I'm like, okay, we'll find out.
Like I used to want to die. Like it was like whatever. And now, then when I got there, I was like, oh, it's like you catch your breath or something. Like your breath gets sucked into your body, and you're just like, holy crap! It's so weird. And so now that isn't as such. Like I don't get to that. You know, it's not as scary. It's more of I think I moved this. It's more of intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And exciting.
You could almost say the fear barrier, that fear barrier, is something like a habituated pattern to keep us up here and not down in here. But once you realize you can move up and down, you know, it just happens naturally, actually, and that in one very real way, that's where you want to go, Like if you watch an animal, you know this. Like that's where they go. They're completely in the movement and in the sensation, and then the complete dissolution of form into emptiness. That's where they live, and they move so naturally that way. And you once you feel that, it's like, oh, okay. And the fear barrier can come here and there, and it's fine. But it's also just an energetic experience. It's also just part of that fucking beautifulness of being a physically manifest nothing, or whatever this is, like completely, you know, emptiness and form, dancing around, moving around. It's crazy, but it does happen somehow in appearance, and it's enjoyable, right? Like, why not? Mm-hmm.
I find myself just laughing a lot because it's just so funny. I spent so much time and I put so much pressure on myself to get to this thing that's not even there. It's not a thing there. Just when you really think about it, you're like, God, it's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one point about that is the seeking that comes along with spiritual seeking or non-duality, whatever. It's not new. It's not like you just made it up when you found out about non-duality. To me, it's everything that came before. It's all the seeking for safety, seeking for validation, seeking for avoidance of unsafe situations or unhealthy situations, the seeking for peace, the seeking for love. All that seeking is already there. We just harness it down into something that says, okay, let's turn it right to its source. Let's find out. Let's look at the seeker. Let's look at the nature of the one seeking and see, well, first of all, is it even there? But that's why it becomes such a funny and strange and paradoxical journey to go inward into whatever this is. Yeah. Crazy, huh?
Yeah, I love it.
Me too.
It's exciting.
It is. Yeah. So how have things changed in the sort of relative for you, like as far as connections with people and work and?
It's been funny actually. There's been a lot of stuff that I've noticed. Like you did it was funny because you did a video and it was so timely. It was about validation and like you were just saying, and I watched that and it was funny because this week at work I would be around people and I would notice um, the ways in which they did that, but then I was like, and the ways in which I also do that. So a whole bunch of stuff just kept coming up and coming up. And before I would have been like, looking at it and beating myself up over it and going, why would you be like that? But now it's like, no, I'm just recognizing. And I think the more that you recognize it, the more that it kind of slowly turns into a different experience, I guess. Does that make sense?
That's the paradox.
I feel like I don't make much sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me.
Okay.
That's the paradox of realizing the illusion of that self, because the paradox is when we don't bind to this illusion of self anymore, the illusion of the mental self, when we don't bind to that anymore, then you can inhabit the relative self. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't need to deny anything. And so then you can laugh at it. But really, you can ultimately just laugh at it and go, oh, yeah, I see why I'm saying that because I'm saying that to get this response out of you. And I never even noticed I was doing that.
Never even noticed.
I never even decided to do that, but somehow it was a habituated pattern. So all this stuff is habituated. There's no bad actor in there. There's no one who's guilty of anything. And if that's a message I could give anybody, even who doesn't care about awakening, there's no guilty party inside you. There's no one guilty of anything. It's a bunch of processes, and the willingness to see those processes closely and clearly, and really the willingness to look back and see who, if anyone, this whole thing's about, is very valuable, and it will unbind so much. It will make things simpler, easier, more light, but it will show you also the areas in which you've habitually not wanted to go. And that's the fear barriers and things like that, but it's okay. Like, you'll get through that just like anything else. Yeah.
I know. I think that's a lot that was shown in the last few months was a lot of the places I did not want to go. So I had to do a lot of that, and that was hard. It was hard, but I'm glad it happened. I think it got me to this point. It was like the last ice breakage, I guess. I don't know, to get the water flowing again or something. So I don't know. I feel like I always try and explain how it feels when maybe I don't even know if I need to. I don't know if it's like me trying to like find a way to create it in like an art way. I don't know, but I'm always trying to be like, what does this feel like? How can I get this?
Yeah. That's a great area to investigate. I find it commonly in people, even after awakening, where it's like, oh, why I noticed I want to communicate this somehow. And it makes sense. Like, a lot of the reasons we use communication has to do with bonding and rapport. And so we talk about how we feel. We talk about our innermost feelings and things like that. But there's something funny about this that you just literally can't talk about. It's not that it's not hidden. It's not hidden. That's the weird thing. It's like it almost does it a disservice by trying to talk about presence or whatever. And so it can be helpful. It can be helpful to look and go, what do I actually want out of getting? What do I want to get out of trying to communicate this to anyone? Am I looking for in subtle ways? Am I looking for, acceptance, validation? Am I looking to feel relaxed? Maybe like I actually expect people to help me relax. I want something from them. I want them to offer me safety. These are not things that will be obvious at all, just like the fear barrier. But if we really go all the way back to like childhood and start to see where the disruptions occurred, we might go, oh, wow, I want that person to essentially validate me one way or another, And so that may not be what's actually going on, but it's a good thing to look at and just question, just go, what is my actual motivation? Yeah. Yeah.
The artist, was his name Thomas?
Yeah. Thomas.
I love how he, it's not really, I don't even think you can do it in words. And that's kind of what he was saying, is like, if I were to write something to go along with it, it would just fill your brain with that. And you have to really, I think that's what if there's like a glass thing I could create where it would do that, instead of words. Like, I don't really know what to say about it, honestly. I almost was like, what do I even talk to Angela about? It feels like it's more of like an expression, but I don't know how to express that, so I don't even know why I need to. I don't need to, but it feels like just feel very like creative right now. And maybe, I don't know why that is, but I just want to create things.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. There's not really anything to say about what we're talking about. And yet there's something about it that just wants to almost express itself, but it expresses itself through just being, through this. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And, but I also want to say, like, having conversations with someone who has gone through these sorts of shifts or is dropped in, however that happened, it is very powerful. It's a transmission. So it doesn't matter what we talk about or don't talk about, or what your words we use or don't use, or talk about something as an event or don't talk about anything as an event, or a self or no self. It still comes across. It just transmits. And it's so funny that the most is spoken when the words are not used in the ways we normally use words.
Yeah. No, that's true. It's true.
Mm-hmm. And it's also through movement. Like the way someone moves, I can just tell. Like, it's different. It's the cadence of the speech, or what they say, or what they don't say, or when they choose to pause or not pause. The transmissions.
That's so funny. So you can tell?
When I'm talking to right now, like, you feel transmitting to me. Like, I can just feel it coming forward. But you won't know that, because you can't know that, because it's like the sun.
Yeah,
the sun can't know it's shining because it's not shining on itself. It's just shining outward, right? It has that feel to it, and it's really obvious to me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's beautiful.
And then what I find is that as realization deepens, it starts to shine like that from everything. Like, literally, what we call inanimate objects don't seem so much like inanimate objects anymore. It's shining forth from, like, the physical, what we call the physical world. That's non-duality. Like, non-dual realization is there's not any boundaries anymore. So it's all. To even say it's shining toward me or something makes no sense anymore. It's just radiating from this. And has this appearance.
Yeah. God, I love it.
Yeah. And it's also going bi-directional and inward and outward at the same time. It's like the masculine and feminine are interwoven. There's not a boundary between masculine and feminine anymore. So integrative and disintegrative movements of everything are simultaneous and completely intertwined. So it happens it's recognized in consciousness immediately, like with awakening, and then it just deepens into the physical form, what we call physical form, sounds and sensations. That have that intimacy that just goes inward, endlessly inward, but also light. There's no actual substance to it.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
Do you vibe with that?
I do.
Yeah, right?
I do. I'm just taking it all in.
It's so funny, and again, there's no reason to speak about it at all, and yet sometimes it just comes forward.
I know. I feel very it's like and I don't know if you can tell me if this is normal. It's I'll get very contracted, and then it's like that will just blow away, and I'll be wide open. Is that normal?
Totally normal, and
to kind of go in and out.
That's the integration disintegration I was describing. So let's broaden that. So let's say there's integration disintegration that is happening simultaneously, and let's just call that the natural flow, the natural state of reality. And then the human consciousness, the reason it felt so continuously contracted before awakening is because it's learned somehow through habit to completely not honor that normal flow of integration and disintegration. It's like pain body. It's literally learned its own like place of being that is integrating when it should be disintegrating and disintegrating when it should be integrating. That's why we feel that intense struggle before awakening. That's the world of mind identification. So it lives in this false reality where it's always pushing when it should be pulling and pulling when it should be pushing. That's just a simple way of saying it. Once that spell of identity breaks, it starts to completely realign, completely at every level, the mind level, the heart level, and the energetic level. And that's happening for you. And it will just continue to happen. It gets subtler and subtler. But the sort of carrier wave on which that's happening, that integration and disintegration, is actually totally natural. But the body mind will perceive it as contraction when maybe it's a natural time to rest, but the habituated patterns of mind identification and behavior and thought are still there to some degree, and they're wanting to push when it's time to pull, or not rest when it's time to rest, for instance. So I would just call that discord. I would just call it kind of a discord, and it goes on for a while. Like maybe kind of in one sense it keeps going. There is a final end to it in one sense, but the clarity and continuing to dissolve of any subtle fixations and the roots of suffering will go on forever, because once the seeming self is no longer at all, then the entire environment is experienced. So yes, and all there are other seeming apparent suffering selves in that environment as well, and so it will affect that as well. So yeah. Strange, but yeah, it is. And I think that it's totally natural to find yourself in this place of like integration and disintegration, or in pushing and pulling, or reactivity after awakening. And it's the more we honor that and just go, that's how it's supposed to be. Like you could say awakening is just shining this massive light of consciousness on everything that's going on inside of us. And so being able to actually see that, being able to see where there's habituated patterns, being able to see where there's repressed emotions is grace. But it will sometimes feel like contraction. It'll feel like moving against something that's more of a natural flow. And you can interpret it as, why am I doing this? But now you see there is no one doing that. It's just a habit, basically. And so then it becomes more and more infused with love, essentially, and just complete absorption and acceptance. And then it stops feeling so much like a contraction. It just feels like natural movements over time. Yeah. Yep. Completely normal.
It was a couple of years ago, I think, when it first, when I just read Eckhart's book, and I was cleaning the counter, and I remember looking down, and it was like I just saw a hand cleaning. Like it wasn't connected, and I was like, what is going on? And I thought, like, maybe I thought I was maybe losing my mind a little bit, but because there's disassociation. And so but then I realized that is because I have a big fear of being crazy, because I was in a psychiatric ward for like 10 days when I was younger and going through all that stuff. And that was like a thing. I was like, I don't want people to think I'm crazy. And I think that was like a fear that I had. And so when that happened, I think that was like a big shift, but I freaked myself out because I was like, maybe I'm just going crazy, And then that led me to, I have no belief in myself. I have no trust in myself or anything. And so it's just been this constant, but it's had to be like, you have to really stop and question it, and if you don't question it, it does not get caught. And I didn't even really realize how important that is either. I mean, everything I feel gets caught pretty fast now. I mean, some things do obviously slip by, but and it's crazy how fast it's getting caught, because then I'm like, oh my God, there's stuff like all the time that, you don't realize you're doing or saying, or I don't know, thinking everything. And I was a big in my head person. That's where I lived. That was my safe space. I was a big thinker, thought nonstop. So that's been a big struggle.
Yeah, and
was the thoughts.
I wanted to like highlight a little bit that disassociation thing you mentioned, because some people, there are many people who have some tendency to disassociate. Some people do it a lot.
Yeah.
And I always like to point out that when I talk about awakening, when I talk about what happens after a significant shift in identity, it's not a dissociated state. Like, does it? The difference is, I would say, the intimacy that you feel. It's an interconnection. Like it feels very much here, 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 rather than like not here at all. Right?
No, it's very couldn't be anywhere else.
Exactly. It's like the opposite of dissociation in a very real.
Yeah. And so now it's like, I can see it, but it was but that all had to come up because I didn't know. So, and then you just start to notice all this other stuff coming up. And before it would be like, oh, I'm feeling really down today or something. And now before I start having the thoughts, I'm like, I feel a feeling. What is this sensation? What is this feeling? And I'll just kind of feel around for it. And sometimes a word will come with it after, and then I'll question that word and be like, is that really, it's just a lot of questioning, I think, is really what it comes down to. Knowing nothing. You have to just admit you know nothing.
That is so important, though, because many people stumble over self-inquiry early on. And some people for a long time, they really stumble because they can't take apart the idea of asking a question from having to know an intellectual answer. Those are the same thing to some people, but that's not what I'm pointing to with self-inquiry. You have to be willing to ask the question and look, but not insist on having an intellectual answer, because your intellectual answer is your life raft. You're trying to use that to stay asleep or to stay in your mind, essentially. Yeah. So that's beautiful. What you just described, self-inquiry or inquiry, beautifully. It's be willing to ask, be willing to feel, be willing to see what's happening, and don't do anything with it. You don't need to. You don't need to solve it.
And don't make assumptions. And don't, And that's what I think I did in the beginning. I was just I was looking at it only from mental and just trying, because that was me, like, I'm going to be the best at this, the best at awakening.
Use whatever you have. Use whatever you have to fuel it, man. If it's competitiveness, fine with me. If it's desperation, fine with me. Whatever, but you have to be willing to go beyond the mind, ultimately. Yeah.
And you have to. And I think if I hadn't really kept going down that far, I would have never even realized that, like, that's just my competitiveness showing. That's me feeling like this will validate me as being a good person to someone or something or whatever, And I had to get over all that. Like, I think my ego was horrible. I think I had a really horrible ego.
Osho made this quote that I think is really pretty accurate. And he said, you really have to have a strong ego if you want to wake up. Like, he's like, you got to develop the ego to...
Thank you for telling me that.
Well, I think what he means by it is, if you're kind of wishy-washy on what you actually want or what's important to you and stuff, then it's easy to get just swept up in the whole validation game with other people, and you don't really look. But if you're willing to just have a strong enough stance to go, okay, something's fucked up here. Something is not right in the way, and it's me. Something to do with just being willing to see that and be like, okay, what's really now you're at a place where you can start to see what's actually happening.
So. I know. And I think I'm so happy that that's happened, because my brain was not a nice place to be. And it was so mean. Like, I couldn't make a mistake. I couldn't, pick the wrong thing. I just was so hard on myself.
That self-judgment.
For so long. And in turn, hard on other people, because you don't realize that the harder you are on yourself, the harder you are to everyone around you, because you're holding people and yourself at these crazy standards that you don't need to do. So
what does self-judgment look like to you now in contrast? Like, for instance, if you were to have a self-judgmental thought or something or a moment, how would that feel different than it would have, like, 2 years ago?
2 years ago, that would have taken me down a horrible spiral, honestly, I think. I would probably go into my little ball and they would just start coming, and I would have, thoughts of suicide. And I don't want to frighten anybody or anything. I feel like the more raw and open and honest that I am about things, it helps me to, I guess, work it out, you know? So, but yeah, I think a couple years ago, it would have really started me down a little spiral of self-hate. And I just really, it was the self-talk was just mean. It was like a little dictator in there. You know, it was, nothing was ever good enough. I was never enough. I was never doing enough. I had to do more, more, more. And I don't know, it's horrible. And now I hear it and it's like, why would you, the other day I was like, why would you say that to yourself? And I was like, it's so mean. And I just started laughing. I was like, no, it just does not do the same thing, because it seems so silly too. It's just like, who are you saying that about anyways? You know, like, who are you trying to compete with actually? Like, it's just, when you really start to...
It's so odd, like, when we look at, who is this actually referring to? Like, who is this about? And when you finally...
Who is it about?
You turn around and see, like, there's no one there. There's no one that it's about.
Nobody,
not in the way that
there.
it feels like it. It's almost like the struggle with our thoughts, or the struggle with our beliefs, or the struggle with our judgment. The struggle assumes there's someone struggling. But you have to look to see, is there actually someone in there struggling? And you just, however that happens, you got to get back to that root. And once that's gone, like when it's not seen very clearly to not ever have been there, then like, you know, judgments can come and go. They can catch you on occasion, but it's not life or death. It's not heavy, you know, it's just a thought.
No, it doesn't. It's a thought, and you realize it's just a thought, and you don't have to hold on to that thought like a little balloon and carry it with you everywhere you go. It's just a thought, and it just goes away. And that was the biggest thing I think that really helped in the beginning, is I did a lot of work with recognizing thoughts, because I knew that my problem was my thoughts and all my thinking thoughts and, you know, everything. So I really did a lot of, I think I rewatched your videos, I don't even know how many times, on thoughts, and just really getting, like, you know, getting that part down. So that helped a lot for me.
Good. I'm glad
my
someone
thoughts
gets
were
some
my
of that
biggest nemesis. No, I did.
Yeah. Well, it's such a funny thing with thoughts, because they just feel so, I don't know, important or real, or like we have to react to them. But if you just keep looking and looking, you realize our minds are like random thought generators. They don't matter. They're just nothing. They're ghosts. Yeah.
And now I can see, I'll have a thought, and I could see how before I would get so sucked into that thought, and now it's like, I'll have the thought, then I'll move to a different thought. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even get stuck on that thought. It's just like, it's weird. It's like, they're just like, what do they feel like? They just feel like little clouds or something, you know, that just kind of pop up and dissipate, and then pop up and dissipate. And it's just not the same. I mean, before it was like, I lived in that cloud. I mean, I was in the cloud. There was no dissipation at all. I mean, it was just my world, and it was horrible. So thank you to you for your videos.
Yeah, I'm glad they're helpful. The other thing I wanted to say about that is, for anyone who's looking at this, and I'm sure many, many people are going to relate to what you're saying on both, well, certainly before, right? I mean, that's human suffering. And I lived in that. I remember that world. It's been a long time now, but I lived in that world too, and it was horrible. But I also want to say, one of the common fears people have is, you know, if I wake up, I let go to this degree or whatever, will I abandon my family? Will I abandon my children? I don't know if you had those specific fears, but it's very common, especially if you're a parent. And I just want to point out, like, if anyone listening can see this, like, what you said is so true, that the way you judge yourself is the way you judge others. It's all the same package. And the best gift you can give, if you're inclined to do this, the best gift you can give anyone you'll ever come in contact with, especially those closest to you, is to wake up. Because if nothing else, the lightness everyone's going to feel it. It's just different. You
Yeah.
just will, people empathically shape those around them. You don't have to teach your kids anything.
Yes.
They will learn they'll learn your emotional landscape just by the way you move, the way you
Mm-hmm.
speak, the way you do your face. Like literally everything will be transmitted. And it's fine. But if you're actually looking at this going, I would love to let go to that degree and I would love to make this transition. But I worry that how will I, whatever. You will love your children just as much, if not more, but you will also feel so much more light with everything that it will benefit them. It just will. It
Mm-hmm.
will benefit everyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm so glad you said that. I completely agree with
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think there was times even when just a couple years ago when it really started, I started becoming aware of all of this. I would say things to her and I would stop and go, wait, wait, wait. I was like, I think that was supposed to be meant for me. I was like, that was not meant for you. And I would say, I'm so sorry. I said that to you, because I would catch it. And then I was like, wow, she really is like my best teacher right now. I could learn the most from interacting with her. And I really have. I really have. She's taught me a
Oh,
ton.
I love it.
So, I don't want to start
No,
crying.
that's so, I'm going to start
But
crying. That's so sweet. What a gift to give your child to actually stop and say, wait a minute. What I just said was actually about me. Don't worry, it's not about you.
yeah, and I try and do that because I think, you know, um, my parents, I love them so much. I mean, more than anything, and we're very close. But during that time with my brother, I mean, I'm one of 7 kids, and I'm like right smack in the middle. So there's 3 above, 3 below. And during that time, you're when you and I used to think like, why are you guys like, just let him go. If he wants to run away, let him go. Like he doesn't want to be here, and I don't want him here. So I just didn't get why they tried and fought so hard to help him. And now as a mom, obviously I get it. It's your child. But I think a lot of us, you get lost in the shuffle because the attention is so focused on that one child and trying to get them the help that they need. And everyone else gets kind of lost, in the shuffle trying to figure stuff out. And I was, those were like my teen years. So it was really hard, anyways. And then to have to go through that with my brother in our family, it was horrible. So I wanted her. I knew that when this started, I was like, I do not want her to grow up feeling like that, and I want her to see that. I just want her to recognize that when I said something that did not make any sense to her, and instead of me going like whatever, and just walk away mad, I had to say, you know what, I recognize that that statement was meant for me and not you. And I think that in turn helps her to also, I mean, the way we talk now, the way we communicate is so much better because we'll actually sit and talk it out. And I'll say, I don't understand why you said that. And she'll say, well, I said it because of this. And I said, that was a miscommunication. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I mean, the way we talk is just very open and honest now. And I want that so much because I feel like I had no idea what my parents were going through. I had no idea of anything. I mean, it was really just survival mode. It was just scary. And I actually, that I'm not laughing because of this, but maybe I shouldn't even.
You can talk about whatever you want. And it's usually very relatable to someone. There's going to be people out there who are going to relate to it, but it's totally up to you.
So it was during I'd say with my brother, the period of years were probably about 5 really, really like hellish years. And the last year that he was with us was like the hardest. And I remember I went to bed and I prayed and prayed and prayed that he would go. I was just like, I want him gone. I want him out of our lives. I was like, it's so hard with him here. It's devastating every day, to see your parents struggle, to see everyone struggling all the time. And I prayed and prayed for that. And then the next day I come home from high school and I open the door and the priest is there. My mom's bawling her eyeballs out, and they said, Nick's dead. And I was like, what? And I thought, Angelo, for the longest time, my prayer was answered, and I killed him. So it was like this huge, on top of everything else, this huge guilt that I walked around with, thinking I killed my brother by my prayer. It's just, I don't know. And I don't even know why I was bringing that up. Why did I bring that up?
Empathizing with your parents and the challenges they were going through.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
That's okay. This happens to me all the time.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's been happening to me so much lately.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, anywho, there was that part of the life. And that was another thing I had to really learn to look at closely and go, why do you feel guilt? I mean, you were at the time terrified out of your mind, had no idea that you were even terrified out of your mind. We're just thinking the best way to solve this problem is for him to go, because that's how it looked in my brain.
Yeah. Well, you're probably not the only one thinking that too at the time, I would imagine, but guilt is a big one. Guilt is a big one. And, again, once we have a significant shift in identity, all of a sudden, all kinds of things, we look back and go, wow, I've been feeling resentment all those years. I didn't know that. Oh, I've been feeling guilt all those years. I didn't know that. Oh, that's what shame is. I didn't know that. So fear. Mm-hmm.
You don't even realize how long and how tight you hold on to fear.
Yeah.
Fear with everything. So those have been like the biggest things.
Well, you're doing
noticed.
Awesome as far as being willing to just go right into shadow work, which not everybody does after awakening. A lot of people don't want to delve into this stuff, but for you, it seems pretty natural.
Really?
To go. It varies. I mean, you can't help it. At some point, you have to. But there are definitely people who are kind of get very up in their mind and they, into awareness. And it's just, everything's just formless awareness, and there's no one to do anything, and there's no one to do work. And okay, until there is. At some point, you're gonna, life will show you what to do. It's like you got to come back and feel this.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because after. I remember there was I think it lasted about a week. And I remember seeing a couple non-duality, before I found you, I saw a couple non-duality videos, and I was like, what are they talking about? I was like, there's no one here, no one to do anything. And I started listening to them, and I was like, well, maybe there's really nothing to do. And you start to really think it for a second and think that really is true.
Feels good, doesn't it? It's like, I don't have to do anything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it feels good till it all comes crashing down on you, and it's like even worse because you're like, no, that is not in it.
No.
Oh my God. That's something I think should be really screamed from the rooftops. It's not.
Yeah.
So much more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's not even that I really wanted to dive into the shadow work. It's just, it was smacking me in the face. I had nowhere else to go. And my brain and everything had gotten so just unhappy to live with and to be a part of. I just was like, whatever I have to look at, show me. I would say that in morning when I was just sitting there, it's like, just show me, because I don't physically think I can do this anymore. I can't live with the brain I have.
Just show me.
It's just too much. Yeah. I was like, just show me so I can just burn it. I just wanted to set it aflame.
Man, that's beautiful.
I was like, I want nothing but the truth. And I don't care how painful that is. I don't care if that destroys me, and what I thought of myself. I was like, give it to me.
Anyone who's watching this, what you just said is a very, very powerful prayer. It's a very powerful intention, and don't say that until you're ready, because you'll get what you asked for. But
you sure do.
Put everything else aside: meditation, all the books, the teachers, the doctrine, the dogma. When you're ready to do that, when you're ready to say that and mean it.
And that's the thing. You have to really mean it.
You have to be ready to not be ready, because you're not going to be ready for it.
Oh no, it'll slap you for sure. But good.
It is very good. Yeah. I mean, that for me, that was it. That's what I want. I always wanted to go there. I just didn't know what that was called. I didn't know you could go there or should go there. And I never had seen a model for that for sure from anyone I had ever met. But I figured it out somehow by reading the right book, I guess. But I want to acknowledge one other thing that came to me when you were speaking, and that is, I can't remember now. It escaped me. It'll probably come back. But it was just something about the fact that you said, there's nowhere else to look. I have to look at this. There's nowhere else to look. And, a nice phrase for that is the only way out is in. You have to realize escaping from life, escaping from, here's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say this. When you come from trauma, when you come from a lot of emotional pain, when you come from unsafety and instability in childhood, and not everybody does. Some people do to some degree, and some people do to a large degree, like massive instability and unsafety in childhood, abuse, all the different things. When you come from that, though, it's a very difficult thing to actually, but it's quite binary, to actually give over your trust to life in this process. It's hard because you've always been the one you've depended on. And even if that required an internal world, and it required scheming, and it required constructing, boundaries in a very specific way to keep anything potentially dangerous away from you, all of that is completely lawful. It makes sense, and it made sense at your developmental stages. You had to do that. So it's important to acknowledge that, first of all, and about yourself, but also to have the, trust in life, the maturity to go, okay, I'm at a place now where I can actually start to trust life itself, like start to trust this process, which means anywhere my attention goes, if my attention goes into the emotions, I can trust that now. Yeah. Oh no, it's hard. It takes some time. Yeah. Yeah. It takes some time to really get that.
When, like you were saying, you have a lot of that turmoil in your head and stuff, and just in your life with trauma and everything. It's like your thoughts start to tell you not to trust the world and not to trust, what's happening, because you must stay safe. You're always in fear and harm's way. That's really how I felt. And I did not realize that that's what I was living from. I had no clue. And so I really had to get to a point of where I wanted to trust in life and was able but those were a lot of beliefs I had to find and pinpoint and deconstruct and go, that's not how it is. Like, that's the illusion. That's not what's been going on. Like, you've been held and you've been taken care of forever. Like, it's not what you're thinking. Like, you need to look at this a different way. And then I finally, when I was able to get to a good place with that, I really did feel more trust in going, I'm ready to burn alive. Burn me up alive. I'm ready, but I did not, I was scared to death, but I didn't know that that's what that was. I did not know it was fear. I thought it was a defense. I really thought I was just being, I'm defending myself, but no, I was just a terrified mm-hmm. person. And I didn't know it.
That is really important as well, is like sometimes what appears to people
strength,
as confidence or strength is really anything but. It's profound fear. Yeah. And not always, but a confident person often. Sometimes I tell people this who get really bad social anxiety and they're really quiet in groups and stuff, and they everyone's so confident, they know what to say. I'm like, okay, they're probably not. They have a reaction formation where they've learned to look confident because they're so terrified of not looking confident. And so what you're feeling is you're feeling their insecurity that they are hiding from themselves through their persona. And a really sensitive person will be like, no, that can't be true. I'm like, it is. You're the quiet one because you're comfortable enough to actually be quiet and not speak inauthentically. But that's uncomfortable because you're feeling the group, the group experience of inauthenticity and fear, right? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true. Fear is a big factor. I think fear is honestly what really, I think it's like the biggest demon that you don't know you have, honestly. Not that it's a demon, but it's, it unchecked, it really hinders your thinking in your life, and it really puts you in a cage. And I think I said that to you. The bird in the cage. Something about a cage.
I might say it like this: that if there's not a demon, but if there was a demon, it's the hiding of that fear from yourself. The fact that you don't see it actually, or the misalignment, or unawareness of it. But also, yeah, it's also once you are able to hold it and feel it and know what it is, then it's just an energy like anything else. It's perfectly innocent fear. And yeah, and it will transform everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that energy, that's a good way to put it, because I think the fear, I would feel it. I would feel that energy, and to me I would automatically go, I've got to protect myself. So whatever persona I would, warrior, I'm strong, or I can take care of myself, don't, whatever you create in your head as your identity or persona. And I kept thinking every time that fear would come up, it's like, oh, time to put on my armor or something, and you get tough. It's time to be tough right now. And I literally did not see that was really just me covering up, like you said, the fear. It was just putting armor on fear, going, okay, you scared little thing. We're going to put these heavy armor on you, and you're going to be able to fight better. I don't know what I thought. But that's really like how I picture it now. I was like, how silly, but I did not know I was so afraid. And I think if anyone else is feeling like they have a lot of, like warrior mentality, or I have to be tough and strong to save myself or to make myself not afraid, it may be because you're just covering up a very strong fear.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I did an interview with a gentleman who did the circling groups at New Folsom Prison. Elder Jackson.
I
Yeah.
love that.
His question to ask yourself, really to start any emotion work, is like, what am I afraid of? And if your answer,
I watched that documentary after that, and I bawled my eyeballs out. Oh my
so
God,
powerful.
it was amazing.
Yeah. Such good work. But and the next question, if your mind says, well, I'm not afraid of anything, well, okay, are you living your best life? I mean, it's like, come on,
Exactly. No, you're afraid of a lot more than you think you are. And it's not a bad thing either. I think that when you notice it and it starts to change, it's such a difference that's all I would hope for somebody, is just to get a little glimpse of it not being that way and maybe being different, and how amazing that feels when you don't feel like you have armor on nonstop. It's a very heavy, weighed down feeling. And I think the more that you can learn to take off and not be as afraid and not feel like you have to wear so much, it gets better and better. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it would seem like to avoid that which we fear chronically and constantly is like what we want, but it's not actually what we want. What we want is just to feel things as they really are. We want to feel the natural experience of being alive, which does come with fear sometimes, and it comes with sadness sometimes, and it comes with ecstasy sometimes, and but it's the avoidance or the pushing away or the not wanting to see that is suffering. That's what makes us suffer. And the more we buy into it and the more we identify with it, the more we suffer. I might have lost you. Oh no, I didn't. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was like, here we go. The
my
power's
iPad
out.
looks like it's gonna die. Lights up.
So.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's true. It's very true.
So I guess I would ask a few questions for anyone who's interested in watching and who is going to tell me that they're relating to you a lot, which I'm sure we're going to get a lot of that. What might you tell them if they're kind of getting started on this, or they are where you were a couple of years ago? What advice might you give them as far as what to do or how to start to approach this work you're talking about, this introspection that you took on?
Yeah. Honestly, I think if you're a heavy thinker, to watch your videos to get the thoughts down, to get the real, truth about that, I think, is what really helped me, realizing that thoughts are not anything other than thoughts. And that really helped me to not get into the spirals that I would always find myself in. And it would be such a spiral that I would just almost freeze, and I would just sit there, and then I would get super depressed because I didn't know what to do. So if that's the case, I think the more that you can really undo the thought spirals, and that I think that's what really helped me in the beginning. And then I think it also, once you do that, it kind of, if you just start to question, just really question and be really, as painful as it may be, really honest with your answers. I think that's the hard part too. Some of those answers are really hard to see, really hard to see. And I think the more that you can just be willing to see them, the better, for sure.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I was looking forward to the conversation. It's as good as I thought it would be, and people are going to get a lot out of it. So.
Thank you for, I mean, I have to thank you, because all your videos have just been life-saving, and they always come at the right time. So
You're
thank
welcome.
you
Yeah,
very
my
much.
pleasure. I'm really glad they're helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
You
you.
take care.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye.